Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Dice Talks, a Dice cultural initiative where we bring great interviews with key people from the world of board games in a casual and fun format that you are already all used to. And in Dice Talks, we always have a guest, as I mentioned, from the world of board games, and to join us to explain a little bit of who they are, what they do, their projects, and give us a little bit more insights on this amazing hobby that we all love. My name is Cesar Mendes, and I'll be joining with a very special guest, someone very, very good and a fantastic person that we have here today, Jason Miceli. Thank you very much, Jason, for joining us.
Hello. Thank you. Thrilled to be here.
Very good, very good. Really good to have you here, and for us so that we can discuss and talk a little bit about what you have been doing, basically. And let's start it off with that. For the people that don't know you and who you are, who is Jason, what brings you to the hobby, how did you come to become a board gamer? Tell us a little bit more about yourself and how did you start on this hobby?
Well, let's see. The fun story that kind of started it all for me, which used to be embarrassing, and now I just tell it. And that is when I was very young, I was out in my neighborhood with my friends garbage picking, meaning I would just look at the top of people's garbage cans and see what's there. And somebody had a brand new copy of Risk, the board game, sitting on the top of their garbage pile, and I snatched it up and I went home and learned how to play it. And I was probably 12 at the time. And that kind of opened my eyes to strategic gaming, right? You know, more interesting games that could be deeper and not just roll a die and move a little pawn on a sorry board or whatever. So that's what started it for me. Obviously, like almost everyone, I've loved games my whole life. And I've been through everything. I've been through the video gaming. I've been through Magic the Gathering phase. I went through Warhammer 40K phase. I went through my Catan and all the other ones. But, it just started at a young age and it never went away. I always loved games of some kind. In high school and early years of college, a buddy of mine and we teamed up and we wanted to start creating board games. And so we formed a business literally in high school. And we had no idea what we were doing. Now, this is 25, 30 years ago. So there was no internet. I mean, literally, it was like the early years of Prodigy and America Online. There was no Board Game Geek. There was no Amazon. There was no Facebook. There were all the tools that we have today. Yeah. In America, we have a great platform called the Game Crafter. That didn't exist. Mm-hmm. So what we were doing was literally going to our town's manufacturing shops, like machine shops, and talking to them about manufacturing a board game and getting quotes. And I mean, we were out of our minds. We had no idea what we were doing, and it was basically a tax write-off for a couple of years because all we did was spend money and didn't do anything with it. So that was back then. Then fast forward 10 years, and now we have more of the tools that we know today are out there and available. And we said, we could probably do something for real this time. And that was 2012 or 2011. And that's when we formed the first company that actually had a chance of doing something. And that was Geek Fever Games. The earlier one was called Team Tactics. Doesn't exist.
Okay. All right.
So yeah, that's kind of the upbringing that brought me to the professional side of where I am now.
All right, good. So you started by recycling games, right? So you're already very advanced.
Yes. Let's call it recycling games. That's a good way to put it.
Right. So that's really interesting. And yeah, I imagine in those days, I remember those days. So where the internet doesn't exist, or when it did, it was very painful to have something, right? The years from Mirk and IRC and stuff like that, and so it's it most likely it would be very difficult to have this kind of initiatives that we have so easily available today. Yeah. Very nice, very nice. And you are here, but your personally, you didn't start on board game, right? You had other you went, obviously you have some, I believe you had other jobs, right, and other professions before going into this, right? Completely off, as far as I know, completely off of this, right? And completely off even from the IT world, right?
No, actually, not exactly. On the career side, so actually, let me just talk about college really quick, because even in college, while I had all these technical skills, I never wanted to go into like computers or the business world. I didn't want to sit behind a desk and type on my computer all day. I wanted to do something more interesting. So I went to school for sign language. I went to school for theater. I went to school for social work. I did all these other like creative style things, and I kept fighting the notion that I would just go into computers. And finally, after 3.5 years of college, I'm like, what am I doing? I'm yes, all these other things are interesting, but that's not where there's a real like career path that actually has money tied to it. So I finally, I left college at the time. I was in Boston, and I came home from Boston. I went right to work for a computer consultancy, and I began my career. And I didn't even have a degree. I just had all these classes. So I finally, 5 years later, I went back and I did a couple more classes, and I got a general studies degree just so I had something to show for all the years of college. But yeah, to your point, I've been in the in the career world for 25 years now. Is it 25? 20, 25, somewhere in there. And a whole bunch of network engineering, project management, product management, designing software, user experience design, all those kinds of things. And believe it or not, I actually do still have a day job. I work at Cigna. Actually, it's now called Evernorth, which is like a new brand that Cigna built, but I basically work for Cigna, which is the insurance company you're probably familiar with. That's my day job, and it's very convenient because I actually, what I do there, I design the wellness part of the tool is called My Cigna, and the wellness side is the side of My Cigna that can actually use a lot of like game techniques and game mechanics to drive engagement. And so my boss loves that I do all this gaming stuff as well, because he sees what I do with Kickstarter and he sees what I do with, community engagement. And we work together to figure out how do we breathe that into what we do with My Cigna on the digital side. So it actually has been a really good synergy working for them alongside all the Phase Shift and Geek Fever stuff that I've done.
That's cool. Didn't know. Okay, very, very nice. So so in terms of you already mentioned. So you are the founder, one of the founders of the Geek Fever games, right? But you also have the Phase Shift games, right? So you are co-founder, if I believe you can say that, of Phase Shift games. So what can you tell us, for who doesn't know these two companies? What can you tell us about each company? What have you been doing? And basically, we'll go into the newer stuff, right? Into there, but tell us a little bit more. And also, you are a designer, right? You did design your own games, right? At some point.
I did. So that's what Geek Fever games began as, it was my buddy Matt and I, and then eventually we added 2 more people, Tim and Darren. So it was the 4 of us as designers. And the whole point of Geek Fever games was designers coming together, testing each other's stuff, helping to develop each other's stuff and pitch at conventions. One of the guys, Darren, is also really good at graphic design, so he was able to help make all of our designs look better and help the pitch quality. So Geek Fever was essentially a design firm. And at this point, so that Geek Fever started in 2012. And when was it? 2020, maybe, about 2 years ago, that we started the transition to Phase Shift was born in 2018. And somewhere in 2020 timeframe, we said, well, this is silly. Why do we have Phase Shift and Geek Fever? Let's just have Phase Shift kind of own all of it. So Geek Fever Games at this point doesn't really exist as an entity anymore. It's all been absorbed into what is now Phase Shift. And why did we start Phase Shift? So what happened in 2018 was two of the people on the Geek Fever team, Darren and myself, we wanted to do more than just design games. So yes, I'm a designer, but I also really wanted to get onto the publishing side and, launch big Kickstarters and work through the manufacturing and work through the logistics and build a company that would start to eventually sustain itself and eventually take over my day job as well. It's not quite there yet, but that's the plan. So Phase Shift is now that company. And like I said, about 2 years ago, we started the process. We said, well, there's no need. Everyone that's a designer, Matt and Tim, they can still design games independently. We didn't need the formal company to have them do that, whereas they had no interest in participating on the publishing side. So that was just Darren and I had that interest. Anyway, that's the story. Basically, at this point, it's all Phase Shift, and we still work with Tim and Matt on different designs that they're working on. We still help each other out. We just didn't need the formal business to do that.
Okay, great, good to know. So, and let's talk a little bit to one of the most recent games that you have, right? Drop Drive. We actually did, and for those that are watching us, you do have a playthrough of us of Drop Drive that it is online. Exactly. Yes. Very interesting. Very interesting. Unfortunately, I wasn't there to play it, but it looked very interesting, and you can look into it. Okay, but just a small teaser about it. What is Drop Drive? How is the game? Okay, explain us a little bit about it.
Sure. So it's at the core, it's a sandbox game, and if you think of other sandbox games, there's not a lot, but they're usually big games like Firefly or Zaya or Merchants and Marauders or Star Wars Outer Rim. Those are sandbox games, meaning you're a character, usually like a freelancer, that you can go in this universe and do anything you want. You want to go to that planet and explore the surface? Fine. You want to go beat up those merchants and steal all their stuff? Fine. You want to go mine an asteroid? Fine. You want to go trade with other players? Fine. Right? You could do just about anything. I love these kinds of games, these sandbox games. They're my favorite games on the market. Drop Drive is our take on a sandbox game, but one that can be played in 30 minutes. So it's a much, much faster, much more accessible and approachable game for a much wider audience. Because, let's face it, not a ton of people have 2, 3, 4 hours to sit down and play one of those deep games. That's more of a hobby game. Our market, which started with the game that we have called Dungeon Drop, this is a much more mass market, or a broader audience game. Dungeon Drop can be played in 15 to 20 minutes. And so we built up this really cool audience that had a desire for faster and more approachable game styles. And when we started working on Drop Drive, we decided, well, let's try to gear it towards that same kind of audience. This gets a little deeper, as you probably know from what you've seen of it. It gets a little deeper, a little more involved. But still a sandbox game experience where you can do all those things I said inside of 30 minutes. And that's pretty awesome. And it's the same designer, by the way. Scott Smith is the designer of Dungeon Drop and drop drive. So yeah, that's the short story of what drop drive is. And again, you're a spaceship. You're a captain of an alien culture, and you're navigating the stars. You're landing on planets and selling asteroids that you've mined. You're beating up pirates. You're collecting salvage and breaking it apart to see what's inside it. You're exploring landscapes. You're picking up alien passengers and delivering them to other planets. All those crazy things that you could imagine doing in a science fiction universe.
That's cool. That's cool. And in terms of mechanics, what kind of mechanics do we use? You do have, especially in terms of setup and stuff, it's a little bit different, right, from most of the games that we are used to. Explain it a little bit more in terms of mechanically, how does it work? What are you worried about? So. How is that? Obviously, if people want to know a little bit more, go watch the playthrough. Okay, so but
playthrough, our Kickstarter intro video.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So the core mechanic of both of these games, Dungeon Drop and Drop Drive, is the unique hook is that you have all these components on the table, right? In the case of Drop Drive, you've got crystals that represent asteroids. You've got little meeples that represent your ships, player ships, pirate ships. You got models or 12-sided, like basically 12-sided dice, but without the dice numbers on them. Those are the planets. You've got anomaly tokens and fuel containers and canisters and cargo and all these different components. So you got a pile of stuff, right, that comes in the box. At the beginning of the game, before you start, you pick all of it up and you shuffle it up in your hand and you drop it on the table. And all that stuff spreads out. And by the way, I know people hear this and they're like, it's going to go everywhere on the floor. We have walls. So we have cardboard walls that go around. So you create an arena and it takes up a space on your table, pretty big space. But you drop everything in this arena, the space arena, and it spreads out and it forms your galaxy. Now, in the case of Drop Drive, there's also a big yellow sun that goes right in the center. So you got your sun in the center. You got planets and spaceships and asteroids and fuel canisters and all these things that spread out. And now your ship is going to start to drop into the system. We go one by one around the table, and everyone drops their ship into the system. And wherever it lands, that's where you begin your journey. So setting up the game is 30 seconds. You drop everything, and now you're going. So now it's this infinitely possible array of this galaxy that you've created through that drop mechanic. And now your ships are going to start navigating through all of this stuff. You're going to go over those asteroids and mine them and pick up stuff and put them in your cargo. Because everyone has, there's some cards too. So everyone has a spaceship card. You've got a ship front and a ship back card, 2 cards that come together. And on your ship card are little spaces of cargo and also your statistics. So different ships are good at battling pirates. Some ships are good at exploration. And so there's all these different stats that your ships have and the cargo spaces. And you're actually going to move your ship through space and pick up cargo. And then you're going to move your ship and land on a planet. And you actually put your ship right on top of the planet model. And now you go through a landing process where you sell your asteroids. You deliver passengers that maybe you picked up at a different planet. You explore the surface. So it's very fluid. It's very dynamic and organic because you literally, like I said, you can go anywhere and do anything. And one of the other unique things that we have in Drop Drive is how you determine where you can go in space. Is we have a special plastic tool. I should have grabbed one and brought it, but there's a plastic navigation tool that we manufactured that has the links that are 1 inch a piece or 2.5 centimeters ish, something like that. And your ship maybe has a rocket drive rating of 4. So you take 4 of these links and they snap together. So now you got a length of 4 of these, and they bend at those joints. And so what you're doing is you're using this navigation tool that's the right length for your ship, and you're holding it over the board and you're kind of bending it and creating your flight path. And so whatever is under it, as your ship moves from one side to the other, you pick up all that stuff, or you interact with the ships or whatever they may be. So we got that navigation tool in there, the drop mechanic. Really cool. Those are the unique angles for the game.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I was very impressed with the game. Is really these small ideas that make cool ideas, right? And even from the perspective of you are very careful, and it's a personal thing, but I always enjoy in terms of the art and the aspect and of the components and the presence on the table, right? Anyone in the convention, as we are moving towards having more of them, it makes an impression. You will look into those walls and all of that, and still, especially if you are in the setup, right? During the setup, what you are doing, just putting pieces all around. So it's really, really, really interesting. Very nice. And you mentioned it was on Kickstarter, right? And it funded very well. So
yes,
congratulations.
Back in, I think we launched it in September of 2021. Yeah. And it ended in October. It did very well, and it's going to be going into mass retail as well. So we already have distribution set up to get our game into mass retail worldwide. And then the other thing that's happening right now, obviously Drop Drive is our newest game, but as I mentioned, Dungeon Drop and several expansions for Dungeon Drop are already on the market. And so we've already been working through with localization partners to get Dungeon Drop translated into a dozen different languages. And so because we have those connections, we haven't started that process with Drop Drive, but presumably we'll already be in that cycle with all those partners, and we'll be able to get Drop Drive going as well into a whole bunch of different languages. That'll take another year or two, but that's the plan.
That's good. That's good. Very good to know. Do people still are able to join the Kickstarter, doing a late pledge at this point, or
yeah? Not, no, please do. Yeah. Please do check it out. Yeah, if you go to the Kickstarter page, at the top is a late pledge button. So all you gotta do is hit the late pledge.
Cool.
It'll take you to BackerKit is the platform that our late pledge is on. That's the Pledge Manager platform. And if anyone wants to come in now, you can get the original Kickstarter pricing if you get the all-in bundle. So it's the all-in is $147. If you just want the base game, that's $27 or $29. So it's very inexpensive to get in with just the base game. But if you want the metal coins and the deluxe walls and all the expansions and everything else, the Kickstarter pricing, all the discounted pricing and all the exclusive stuff is available in that bundle for $147, and you can get that through the late pledge. So even though you're late pledging, you still get the best price and all the Kickstarter goodies that everyone else did during the campaign if you get the bundle. Nice.
We'll put the link down in the description, okay, with the direct link for the Kickstarter. So if you are interested, please go there, okay. Go see it because it's really interesting. You'll be interested in seeing more of it. Okay, great. So going back to you a little bit. So you have been a designer, right? You have several games with. So, and at this point, we haven't seen anything from you for some time. Are you stopped? Is there any perspective of having new stuff from you, or are you just on the publishing side more at this point?
So, I got examples of it behind me, but it's all right. So, okay. I designed the game Dead Man's Doubloons, which was put out by Thundergriff Games several years back. And that was kind of my first official game, and it was a good release. Definitely was a little rough around some of the edges there, but that's what a first release is. And through Geek Fever, I designed Mars vs. Earth. That was alongside my friend Matt. I designed Trick Legacy is another game you can get on a site called The Game Crafter, and a couple others. So yes, there's been some designs under my belt. Most of my efforts now are focused on publishing and developing the games that I publish. So I work very closely with Scott Smith, the designer of these two games. and Gregory Skolnick, the designer of Tavern Tales, which your team has played that as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And a number of 2 new games and 2 new designers that we're working with. So I do work closely with all of them and help to develop the games to get them where we want them to be. But there's one game that actually Phase Shift signed back in 2018, and we said that'll be the first game that we launch, and it's my own design. It's called Queen's Quest, and it's a very retro style roguelike game, so a dungeon crawler with a 8-bit theme, so it's styled to look like the old 8-bit, 16-bit style games on the Nintendo. That's my design. We were gonna launch that first, and then we found Dungeon Drop, and we found Scott Smith, and we said, well, you know what? That's gonna be way easier to publish first, so let's do that and kind of get ourselves going. And thank God we did, because that blew up and took off. And that's why here we are in 2022, and we still haven't gotten back to Queen's Quest fully, because we got Dungeon Drop, the expansion for Dungeon Drop called Drop Too Deep. We got a 5-player expansion called Wizards and Spells. Then we did Tavern Tales, which is like a spin-off of Dungeon Drop. Then we did Drop Drive. So that's 5 games in, right? But it's all in that same style, that very approachable, more mass market or family-friendly game style. We decided that we will get back to Queen's Quest, but we needed to let this other stuff breathe in the market because it was doing so well, and we didn't want to stall and lose focus on it. That said, Queen's Quest is coming back to the front burner because I do have the itch. I need to get my fingers back into the design, and I have been putting much more thought into it again recently. I don't know if it'll be later this year or next year, but Queen's Quest will still come back to the front burner.
Nice. That's good. Yeah, the from what I know, it looks very interesting. So it will be very good to, if you can, then move forward with that also. Very nice.
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
Great. So
it's a deeper game. It's a big box game. Whereas you see all these are all these like cute little cubicle style games for a reason, because they're meant to be easier to pick up and play and family friendly. Queen's Quest is a big box game, so that's why it's heavier. It's a different crowd.
Okay, can't wait to know more about it then. Okay, so from the Phase Shift games then, what else do we have on the table in the near future? Okay, what can you tell us on the next 1 or 2 years, what we'll see from you guys?
Well, I could probably tell you 3 or 4 things. So obviously we're working on finishing development. We're finishing development for Drop Drive right now. We're doing our final play testing and getting that ready for manufacturing. Next up, we've got, well, I just mentioned Queen's Quest, so that's looming out there. But then we've also got 1, 2, 3 other games in the works right now. One of them is another design by Scott Smith, and it's a departure from these games, meaning it doesn't have like the drop mechanic that Dungeon Drop and Drop Drive have, but it's still very unique. It might be in the same cubicle box size or slightly bigger, we'll see. And that's a skiing theme. So you talked about all the, I don't know how much snow and ice you get. We got a ton recently, so we're all in this mode of thinking of the skiers that go up to the mountain. So we've got this really cool ski resort building game. And that'll be a 3-dimensional oriented game, which we're really excited about. So that's on the horizon. Then we've got a tile laying game that we might call Dungeons of Rima. We're still working on the naming, but the idea is that it's in the same universe as Dungeon Drop. And what it is that you're essentially sending the heroes out from town to go into the dungeons and collect the resources that are in the dungeons, whether those are gold and gems or monster kills, like you're clearing out the dungeon of all the goblin vermin, and bringing those resources back to town to build the town up. So it's all about building the town, and you have tiles that you're laying that represent the town areas, but on the outskirts of all the tiles are the dungeons that your characters have to go into. So you're trying to arrange the tiles in a certain way so that you're able to create the buildings and the structures in town that you need based on the resources that are available from the dungeon spots. So it's a very interesting take on a tile laying game. Also, all the pieces are very unique shapes. There's like triangles and trapezoids and parallelograms. They're not like just squares like a typical tile laying game. So that's a new game that we signed with a new designer. And then another new game that we also signed with another designer is also going to be in the Dungeon Drop universe. And that is called Boblin's Rebellion. Now, Boblin's Rebellion... So Boblin is the name of our goblin.
Yeah.
If you look at the box, there's that cute little goblin right there. Mm-hmm. So obviously in Dungeon Drop, you're going in, you're killing goblins all the time. But what happened was, as we developed the game, the goblins became such a loved character that we turned one into a hero. So you can play as Boblin the hero, Boblin the goblin. And now that we have Boblin the hero, the story of Boblin's Rebellion is that he is trying to rally all the other goblins in the dungeon to rise up against the dungeon overlords and join the humans. And so it's just this adorable game where you've got all these little goblins that are basically fighting against the dungeon, and the goblins are the resources, and they can be trained into different kinds of goblins and such. It's an engine builder game, but only one resource, and the resource is goblins.
That's so cool.
We have.
That's really,
oh yeah,
that's really innovative. Yeah, very good. only by that I'll be interested. Only by that story I'll be very interested on it. Very good, very good.
Excellent.
Great. And this is all on the next couple of years or something like that? Do we expect to know more? Yeah. More
well, because those last two games, Dungeons of Rima and Boblin's Rebellion, are probably going to go straight to retail. I don't think we're going to run a Kickstarter for those because they're complete games. When we signed both of those designers, we played their games. They were basically done. They're full. They're complete. They had a different theme. Like the Goblin one was called Goblin. I don't even remember what it was called originally. Goblin something. But it was about the goblins coming up and attacking the town. And we saw the game, we played it, we said, well, we love it, but it's going to be the Boblin hero rallying his friends to fight the dungeon. So we kind of turned it on its head. Yeah. So the theme was a little different, but the game was basically done. Now, we worked with Alex, the designer, to develop a couple like advanced modules that we can put in the box. And likewise, we worked with Matt, the designer of Dungeons of Rima, to add solo, team play, and cooperative mode, because he just had the normal adversarial. So now we're going to have all those modes for 1 to 6 players, which is awesome. So we're just kind of increasing the value of each of those games a little bit. But for all intents and purposes, it's not like those games are going to be like big Kickstarters with all sorts of stretch goals and deluxe components. There's not a whole lot of that kind of stuff to do with those. So we might just go straight to retail, and that might even be later this year. We'll see how the timing works out. Okay. The skiing game and Queen's Quest. Those two, the skiing game's called Slopeside. Those two games will deserve a Kickstarter. And I just don't know right now if one or the other is this year's Kickstarter or next year. So we'll have to see as the year progresses. But yeah, they're all being worked on and will come out over the next 2 years. A lot of stuff.
A lot of stuff. A lot of interesting stuff. Very interesting, very different. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so let's move on. And one thing that we always like to do with all our guests is a little game, okay, that we call it, you can translate it like over and under, okay, where basically I'm going to say something, a word or something like that, and we would like to know if you think that it's something that is overrated or underrated in the industry or by the community. Okay, in your opinion, and just give us a little bit of your perspective why, right? Just very funny and stuff. Okay, so the first thing that I want you to tell me if it is overrated or underrated, it's wooden cubes.
Wooden cubes?
Wood cubes, yeah.
Well, I mean, you know what my main game is, right? Dungeon Drop. So I'm not going to say that wooden cubes are overrated, because that is the entirety of what's in Dungeon Drop. I will say this. What we've done and what we intend to do a lot more of is when we have wooden cubes, like in Dungeon Drop, the deluxe version had printed faces on 2 of the sides. So like the goblins all have a cute little face on opposite sides. So when you drop them on the table, you can see their faces peering out in different directions. And we're actually going to probably build in replacement for people who got the retail version, which didn't have the printings. We're going to give them a way to upgrade their copy of Dungeon Drop to get those printed goblins. And we might put that in Boblin's Rebellion. Nah. So what I will say about wooden cubes is what we like to do is use wooden cubes and go further with them, like do that heat printing and make them look really, really cool and unique, because they're a great, easy component to make. And we've worked with our manufacturer, and we had to work with them special to be able to print on really small cubes, because that's not normal. And that's what we like to do with wooden cubes. So underrated.
Okay, great, fantastic. So let's go to the other side of the coin, miniatures.
Minis?
Yes.
I think minis are overrated. And this isn't just because I do wooden cubes. As a gamer, I buy games all the time. I back Kickstarters, and for me, I am much more interested in full color artwork, on whether it's on cardboard or on acrylic standees, or thick meeples that are custom cut but with full color printing on both sides. That's what I like, because I like seeing vibrant artwork, color. I like Simon as a company. I like their games, but it's just a sea of gray plastic. It's so much gray. And I don't know, for me, I think that's overrated. And they're so expensive because of all the minis. I would rather have custom meeples that have full color artwork on both sides, so that when I'm sitting back, I can actually recognize what's on the table. I don't know if it's my old eyes. I'm wearing glasses here. Like, I see all these minis on the table, and I'm like, which one's that? Oh, that's the such and such zombie, or the whatever hero. But like, I have to get up and look at it. I could pay someone to paint them. That's a whole lot of money. I'm not a good painter myself. Anyway, I think minis are overrated.
All right, good explanation. Okay, let's move to the third one. Art in board games. We already touched a little bit on it. So, what do you think?
I don't think it's underrated or overrated. I think art is appreciated. Art sells. You need good artwork for most games. You need good artwork to sell the game, and then of course, once it's sold, the game itself has to be good to stand the test of time. But that artwork is what catches people initially. So artwork is crucial, and it's going to resonate with different audiences. And you need the artwork to match the audience that you're going for. You know, Dungeon Drop has all this chibi style artwork, these really cute characters, and that chibi style resonates with the mass market, with the family-friendly audience. If I was going to make that game for the hardcore hobby gamers, we would have done a totally different art style. So you got to have art that matches, and good art will sell. Then you've got anomalies like Terraforming Mars, which had a strange artwork style. and it's number one on the charts for however long, right? So there's those anomalies, but I think in general, artwork is super important. So I don't think it's underrated or overrated. I think people know it's super important, and it is.
Yeah. And all over the place, I will add, right? Because sometimes, at least for me, I'm a very visual person, from artwork, etc. And there is something that really bugs me when the art of the box is fantastic, and then you see the game. And the game has nothing to do with the art. That completely drops me off on that. Like it's just a calling, but it doesn't live up afterwards in terms of art, right? So, and that's something that fortunately doesn't happen more often. And I agree with you. It's something that is important to bring people into the game. All right. So I have one last one. It's a little bit more trickier, a little bit more complex than the other ones. So, but it goes against the games that basically you haven't been discussed here. So there is that thing in terms of having innovation, right? Real innovation, or having reutilization of known mechanics, right? So there is sometimes this perspective of there is a game that has completely new, not necessarily mechanic, or completely new way of playing the game. For example, you have something that it isn't that used, that is to drop the components as a setup, right? So basically, it's something that is not very, very often to see, right? And even that ruler that you show that tells how much space your ship will go. So. That could be, for me, real innovation, right, against reutilization of known mechanics. Do you think that what the community or the board game community looks for, it's or underrated or overrated, these kind of things? What is your opinion of it?
Okay. Yeah, it is a harder one.
Yes.
I think most publishers are on the lookout for really innovative mechanics or ideas. And I think, this is hard. I think most publishers would say they want really unique games, and it's hard to find true new innovation. Even something that's so stupidly popular like Dune Imperium came out this last year, right? And it's one of my new favorite games, top 5 games of all time. It's deck building and worker placement. Those are 2 standard mechanics that have been done many, many times. Clank is deck building with a little dungeon mechanics. Very, very normal mechanics, but it was done in such an elegant way. So I think those are 2 examples of games. They just used existing mechanics, but they did it really well, really elegantly, really slick, tested super well, clean, balanced, gorgeous artwork in both cases, for the most part. Anyway, so those can be very successful. What I will say for us, for Phase Shift, I mean, our name says it all. Our games absolutely need to push some dimension, shift a dimension, and do something really different. And that's what Dungeon Drop does, right? Like you said, that drop mechanic, that's new. That's not something that you see. The skiing games, Slopeside, you will see something else new that you have never seen. And then each of the games have their own kind of unique hook. So we are very much looking for games that shift a dimension or push some dimensional envelope in some very unique way. It's hard to do. And and some of these other games that I mentioned, Boblin's Rebellion, it's an engine builder. The Dungeons of Rima, it's a tile placing game. So even us, do those really do something so unique and new? not to the level Dungeon Drop does, but that's okay. We're still gonna make great games that do like what Clank and Dune Imperium did. They're just really elegant productions with mechanics that they've done a good job implementing. We'll still do some of that too. And that's what Tavern Tales is. It's a light bluffing game. It was a very elegant, clean system. So I guess we're a blend in the middle. I think we're always going to be looking for the things that really do something different, because that's what put us on the map. Dungeon Drop did that, and we want to do more of that kind of thing. So hopefully that answers it.
Okay, very interesting take on it. Okay, very good. Yep. So, guys, thank you, Jason, for your time. That's unfortunately all the time that we have. Okay, so you have been listening to Dice Talks, Dice Cultural Initiative, where we bring everything into usually, well, not in this case, it's in English, but usually in Portuguese. So, and yeah, but that's the thing. We need to push boundaries here also, right? So exactly, right? So that's the point. So thank you very much for joining us. Okay, I'm Cesar Mendes, and don't forget, if you to keep going on this conversation on the description, on the social media, we are all over the place: Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Discord. Don't forget to join our Discord channel. We are all over the place, so please continue this conversation, ask questions, tell us if you have tried any of the games that we talk about it here. So keep us going and keep us on top of things, so that we can keep this conversation alive. I hope you join. If you join, don't forget to do those 3 little things: to like, subscribe, and click the bell, so that you'll be notified about everything that we release on YouTube, especially. Exactly. Jason is helping me doing this so much better, right? So, and also share with your friends. Okay, if you like the conversation, they will most likely like it too. So your friends, your family, anyone. We are not picky. You can share with anyone that you want. Okay, Jason, thank you very much. This was a very interesting conversation. It was amazing to hear your stories, to hear your incredible contributions to the hobby, and it was really a pleasure to have you here.
Well, likewise, I've loved working with. I've met now 4 or 5 of your team. I played games with several of them, so it's been great working with all of you from Dice Cultural. Thank you.
Fantastic. So if you don't follow Jason or Face Shift Games, please do. We'll leave all the links below on the description, okay, so that you can very easily go there and look, because as you see, you have a lot of good stuff already here, and in the near future, we have a lot of good games coming in. Okay. Finally, thank you very much, Jason, again. Nice talking with you guys, and nice talking with you, Jason, and see you guys, and have fun.
Bye-bye.